This was a nice little chart that I found on this site that I kind of wanted people to look at and see because it gives you an idea of what are the cars that are going to give you about 10 years of reliability along with giving you the lowest cost of maintenance. One of the biggest things with credit cards that I always tell people is they are not the devil. Whispering in your ear, it's just $5, it's just $10. But here's the thing, if you learn how to leverage the use of these credit cards to yourself, you're going to be able to set yourself up for massive returns for basically doing nothing whatsoever. But look at what he's going to end up with. About $340,000 by the time he retires. It's a little good bit of change and everything for someone, especially for just $100 a month.
I'm in a bit of a tricky situation right now. I'm spending almost all of my paycheck on things like OnlyFans, Netflix, junk food, up to my eyeballs in debt. I'm just spending all my money on all kinds of different things that I really, really want, but I don't think I need. And I feel pretty depressed, to be honest with you. And I want to know, is there anything I can do right now to get out of this situation?
Yeah, so that's a all too common scenario in the United States, I'm sure over the pond as well and everything. If we're going to go further into that, can I ask about some of your debts? What are some of the things that you're indebted to? What are some of the terms of these debts?
Well, I have a car on finance and it's costing me an arm and a leg to pay for. I really like the look of it. It's nice and shiny and flashy and fast.
But that 29% APR, though, you know?
Oh, yeah, that always gets you. So essentially, first I'll kind of introduce myself here. My name's Fred. I used to be a moderator for Josh's group. Due to personal reasons, had to step away from it, but have a tremendous amount of respect for Josh, what he's doing, trying to just start a grassroots movement here, and I'd like to be able to help as much as I possibly can. So also to preface this, I am not a certified financial expert. I'm not a CPA. I'm not an MBA or any of that stuff. I'm a business owner. I deal with some pretty large sums of money, and I've learned quite a bit over the years. But a lot of people end up in these situations like what Josh is talking about, that just there's no management, there's no structure, there's no breakdown or analysis of where money is going, what's coming in, what's going out, where it's going to. So kind of what I want to talk about is I want to break it up into about 3 sections here. I want to talk about debts and depreciating assets. I want to talk about how to organize and budget and create a structure to analyze where money's coming from and where it's going to. And lastly, I want to talk about the future. I want to talk about how I don't care how little money or how much money you make. You can end up broke or you can end up a millionaire by the time you retire. And that goes for people making $12 an hour or $12,000 an hour. It does not matter. So first off, we're going to go into those depreciating assets and the debts and everything. So I know you said you have a car that was a terrible financial purchase. That's a very common trend there, especially in America. Gabe, I'm sure that you can attest to. We all see the gigantic diesel trucks driving around, $10,000 lifts and wheels and tires on them, or young guys in sports cars that we know they can't afford. Now, Josh, do you also have like any credit card debt by any chance? Do you have like any pension loans that were taken out? High interest type payday loans, anything of that sort?
Tons of credit debt. Tons of high interest loans. I don't even know how much I'm spending. It's that bad.
So that's one of the big things too, is, in America and throughout pretty much most of the Western world, we live our lives by credit. And credit is essentially what a company or an institution is willing to lend to you under certain terms of their profit, meaning the interest rate that you're paying on those loans or the credit cards. And in turn, you're issued a credit rating or a credit score, or whatever you want to call, that dictates your reliability to these financial institutions and future ones that you're going to inquire within. So, one of the biggest things with credit cards that I always tell people is they are not the devil. Like, people will always tell you stay away from credit cards. They're going to say don't get a credit card. It's like this little devil sitting on your shoulder whispering in your ear. It's just $5. It's just $10. But here's the thing. A lot of credit cards offer amazing rewards. They offer airline miles. They offer 1, 2, even up to 5% cash back in some cases. And with these credit cards, if you learn how to leverage the use of these credit cards to yourself, you're going to be able to set yourself up for massive returns for basically doing nothing whatsoever. So one thing that I've done personally is when I met my wife, she was very young, no experience in the real world, didn't understand finances or how to, navigate that realm. I got her first credit card with $1,000 limit on it, and she literally used it for only gas or recurring expenses, stuff like, groceries that she had to buy for meals or whatever the case may be. And that took her from down in 600 credit score or whatever, because, she had absolutely no history. This young kid who never bought anything before. Right now, I think she's sitting somewhere around like a 790 or something like that. And it's all just because all she's doing is just swiping the card, running up a balance, and paying it off at the end of each month. That is, from this section, if nobody takes anything else from what I'm saying, if you have a credit card, you pay that thing off at the end of every single month. And if you don't have the money in your actual account in hard, liquidable cash, then you do not have the credit. That's the biggest thing. Carryover balances, that's where these banks start profiting off those massive 25 to 30% interest rates that are usually stacked onto these cards. That's where these airline miles and the cash back and this, that, and the other does not matter to you anymore, because now all of that times 10 is going to the interest. So if you have a credit card, you will pay it off at the end of every month. That is the biggest takeaway from this one, but they are not the demons that people make them out to be. You just have to understand how to use them and impart some discipline on yourself in using them. So now, Josh, you also say you got a car too, and this car was a horrible idea. And cars are they are the biggest investment we're ever going to make that is going to wreck us financially year after year. Because unless you're buying an antique or some rare car that most people are not buying, your car will just continue to depreciate. You buy a new one, drive it off the lot, 20% of the value gone right there. So, however, we all need a car, so that's just something that you're going to have to learn to deal with. So what I kind of want to do now is I want to share my screen. So I'm going to try to do this correctly. I think right here. Can you guys see what I'm sharing?
I can see it.
Alrighty, so what we're looking at basically this is consumerreports.org. Obviously, not every website's the perfect website or anything of that sort, but Consumer Reports, KBB, stuff like that, they're usually pretty good resources to go after. So essentially what you look at with different cars, you don't look at the MSRP, the upfront price tag of buying them. You need to look at the price tags associated with them as you own the vehicle, because like you look at this diagram right here, alternator replacement, almost $2,000 on a BMW. Statistically, the average American does not just have $2,000 to drop on a new alternator, and the car is not going to give you a 2-3 month warning that it's going out. So actually recently, last month, the transmission in my truck went out, and that was about $13,000 some odd dollars to. Now, granted, I went ahead and got the super nice Suncoast and all that. All the car guys who watch this will know what I'm talking about. But, that's just not something that average people can just immediately shell out and flush down the toilet on something like that. So when we go down here, this was a nice little chart that I found on this site that I kind of wanted people to look at and see, because it gives you an idea of, what are the cars that are going to give you about 10 years of reliability, along with giving you the lowest cost of maintenance. I always point people up here. Toyota, time after time, they are the best A to B, just basic car that you need. And right now, Josh, that is what you need. You need to, in some cases, you'll have to go upside down on principle, which means if he has a car, let's say it's $50,000 what he bought. So he bought a $50,000 car. He still owes $30,000 on the car. You're going to go in, trade this car in, and get a new one, but you're going to have to stack that $30,000 that you owe on top of the new loan. That's what we mean by going upside down on a vehicle. So you got to get yourself into a more reliable vehicle, because I'm assuming that whatever you did buy, if it's nice, shiny, fast, all this, that, and the other, that usually means a lot higher upkeep cost. It means you're going to have to be running 91 or 93 octane gas, a lot more expensive. You're going to have to be doing more oil changes with higher quality of oil. Tires are not going to be lasting you as long. There's a lot more factors to consider versus just a basic sedan or SUV to get you point A to point B. So that's going to be one of my biggest first things, is you need to get out from underneath this car, because as bad as you think the monthly payments are, what you're not seeing is the other costs associated with it that you're saying, I don't know where the money is. I don't know what I'm spending on. You're spending a lot on gas. You're spending a lot on maintenance. You're spending a lot of money you don't need to be spending right now. So that's one of the biggest things. And to everyone watching this, do your research on vehicles, because they are the ultimate make or break thing financially for the average person. And, you can go down, and there's another chart down here. It's also a fantastic little tidbit of information. I know people also have their opinions on electric cars, but electric cars are truly a zero maintenance car. The average electric car usually comes with an 8-year, 100,000-mile warranty on batteries and everything. There's tons of government incentives behind them. And if you have the ability to keep it charged, like at work you have a charger you can use, or at home you have a 220 outlet in your garage or something where you can get into the car with a full charge every single day, I would honestly recommend it, despite all the politics that surround them. And that's a whole nother issue. But that's the thing you need to look at, is look at the price of the vehicle, but look forward. Look into the next 3, 5, 10 years and see, what is this depreciating asset going to cost you over that amount of time? So with that being said, Josh, you said you were spending a bunch more on other things you don't need to be spending on, fast food, OnlyFans, all that other stuff too?
Yeah. Spending a lot on the OnlyFans, that's like the biggest expense right now.
Oh, well, that's a whole nother podcast in and of itself right there. But, we classify that under the guise of entertainment and everything. So it's your entertainment, that's your hobbies, that's whatever you want to call it. And that is a financial breakdown, because hobbies and stuff do end up costing you in some way, shape, or form. Example, my wife likes to play this thing called Pokemon Go. I didn't know that it's still a thing, but apparently it's a very, very big thing. I'm just an old fuddy-duddy who doesn't understand. But, and she always used to say to me, it's free. There's no cost associated with it. I'm like, honey, you have drove 60 miles plus in one day with your friends playing this game. What are you talking about? There's no cost associated with it. Gas, the wear on the vehicle. And those are things a lot of people do not necessarily think about. They're not going to think about what is associated with doing a certain thing, like a mileage on a vehicle, driving to and from, or if you're going somewhere and you have to buy food for a certain event you're going to, whatever the case may be. So the biggest way that you manage this is you manage it through input and output analysis. So you look at money coming in, as in your income, your revenue, whatever you want to call it. You stack and organize all of that. And always, I tell people, look at the after the tax fact. So, when you get your paycheck, don't look at pre-tax and pre-Medicare and pre all this, that, and the other, because that's money that doesn't exist to you. So look at what's actually going into your bank account, what's actually making it through all the filters of everything the government's going to take out beforehand. And now I'm going to try to switch the screen. Are you guys looking at a spreadsheet?
No.
Okay, I'm going to stop this then. And then I'm going to try to do it again.
I'm just going to break character really quick. I'm just going to say right now that I'm not spending extortionate amounts of money on OnlyFans.
Maybe, Josh. Maybe you're telling us the truth.
We got to throw the disclaimers out there, right?
Yeah.
We forgot about that.
I don't know.
And I'm not up to my eyeballs in debt or anything like that. My car is 20 years old. I am a cheapskate in real life.
And that's great too. If you're going to have an older vehicle that gets you A to B and everything, that's another avenue. The biggest thing too is when people are taking out loans on vehicles, and I'm going to touch on this later on, but I'll just kind of give a quick preface right now. Interest rates are one of the sneakiest things that nobody ever thinks about. They hear these tiny little numbers, 2, 3, 5%, whatever. Well, guess what? 5 to 6% on a home loan is going to end up having you spending more than the amount of money you're actually taking out on principal. So in all reality, you're buying 2 houses at that rate of interest. Same thing applies for vehicles, but on a smaller scale. If you can get into older vehicles and you're a little bit mechanically savvy, you can do small repairs by yourself and stuff, and you don't need to grab a loan for these vehicles, don't. It is a depreciating asset. It is not going to help you ever other than transportation. And Josh's $500 beater Honda is going to get him to where he needs to go, the same as a $500,000 Lamborghini. It doesn't matter what car you have. Your speed limits are usually 75 miles an hour. Guys, correct me if I'm wrong anywhere, but I think that's about the top end that we see for speed limits. So no point in having all that if you can't afford it. Now let me try and get this screen share going again. Okay, I think I figured it out here. You guys looking at a spreadsheet now?
Yes.
Okay, so this is a pretty rudimentary, just little what I do to kind of track finances and everything. And Excel is one of the greatest tools you can possibly use to keep track of anything. I know Excel can be pretty scary to some people, pretty daunting, but here's the thing. Go sit in front of YouTube for 2-3 hours and you're going to become an Excel master. It's really not that bad. But this is kind of what I'm talking about with the whole input and output. I break it down between me and my wife up here, and we look at all the income that comes in, total everything up. And then you go down to expenses, and we have 2 different types of expenses here. And however you want to go into this when you organize it, how deep you want to go or how surface level you want to go is up to you, as long as you are keeping track of every dollar, every cent, everything that's going in and out. So you look at expenses that don't change. For instance, like mortgage, internet service, vehicle payments, whatever the case may be. Those are things that every month basically down to the dollar what it's going to be. So those ones, you already know that money's gone. It doesn't exist for you or anything. Then you go down to stuff that's variable, that changes over time. And that's going to be stuff like, your water bill, your electric, fuel inside your vehicles, entertainment like we were just talking about and everything. So with those ones, what I do basically is everything gets totaled up and you just write your little formula and all up there. And with mine specifically, I kind of made a little formula that runs in the background of Excel that flags these like exorbitantly high numbers each month. Like you can see, not really in the hundreds or even below 100. And then over here, over $2,000. It was some furniture and everything. So it's going to flag this so that I can go into that and I can look by myself and see what was the cause of that exorbitantly high amount of money that was spent that 1 month. Or like down here in June, you can see that 13 grand, that was the transmission and everything. So, this is just a really good way to keep yourself organized, to understand where money's going, where it's coming from, where it's going to. And it doesn't matter how much money or how little money or what you do for work or anything. Here's the takeaway from this section of it. You have to budget. You have to have a budget. You have to have something all the time that is keeping track of all these different things, because you know, you might think like, oh, there's some freaking millionaire out there who he can just spend money on whatever he wants. He doesn't have to think about it. Well, no, not at all. At any point, there's always going to be a way for somebody to go broke, no matter how much money they have. If you are not budgeting, this is why these lottery winners win 100 million, 200 million, 500 million. Look at them 3 years later. They're broke again. Why is that? One of the biggest things is like when they buy a house. They buy a house and they're like, oh, I just won $10 million. You know, this house I've always wanted costs $2 million. It's no big deal. I've got plenty of money to afford that. Okay, yeah, you do. You can afford the house, but here's the thing. Can you afford the taxes? Can you afford the property upkeep? Have you ever seen a $1,000 utility bill in your life before? Because those kinds of houses will produce $1,000 utility bills. So these are all things people never think about, and they have to think about. And I'm going to put this out there too. If anyone ever wins the lottery, anybody at all, go to a freaking financial advisor the very first thing you do. When you scratch that ticket and you find out you're a millionaire, the first thing you do is drive to Fidelity or Charles Schwab or whoever you want to invest with, and you go talk to a financial advisor who's going to tell you, no, you don't need that Bugatti. Because that's another thing. At Bugatti, I think an oil change is like $35,000 on those things. Oh, I can afford the car. Yeah, great. Can you afford the maintenance, though? So, you know, that's kind of, I hope that helps, Josh. You know, kind of telling you that you need to start analyzing these things. Like, I'm not going to tell you got to stop OnlyFans or whatever your whatever other entertainment or hobbies you have. But if you're making a certain amount of money and you are not able to track it because an exorbitant amount is going towards these things, you need to start looking at where can the cuts be made from. And this is kind of where it goes a little bit abstract. This is where we start talking about the discipline and stuff like that. This is where we start talking about, you know, restrictions you have to be able to put on yourself by yourself, and you need to be able to hold yourself accountable for them. And that's another area where a lot of people struggle. That's why I like showing spreadsheets to people and telling them, because you can just look at cells. You can look at one number and you can say, I'm going to take this number. I spent $200 last month. I'm going to take it down to $150 next month. Let's say on alcohol or something. So, you know, you spend $200 on beer in June. Then in July, you're going to spend $150. In August, you're going to spend $100. It's stuff like that where you have to set these limiting but attainable goals. Because if you just tell yourself by the end of the year, I'm going to be out of debt and I'm going to be freaking financially set, that's just not realistic, and it's not going to happen. So identifying those certain areas where you're having issues and then working to knock each one of those down little by little, that's where you're going to start seeing those compounding factors that are going to start making big changes out of little ones. Now, speaking of compounding, I want to go into your future, Josh, because right now, you know, stuff is not great for you, but it sounds like you're really motivated. Sounds like you're ready to make this change in your life. So let's say in the next couple of years, you're out of debt and you're in a good, comfortable place in your life. But what are you doing to set up old Josh? What are you doing for old Josh right now, who's going to be frail and feeble and can't work and just wants to travel and enjoy his life?
Well, something that I recently started doing was I was getting like £100 because I'm not like you Americans. We trade in pounds. I was putting £100 aside every payday, and I was putting it in an investment fund. So every month, it's gonna grow.
And that's fantastic. And I'm glad you brought up the difference between American and British and everything here because honestly, I cannot speak for the UK. I can't speak for, Germany or Lithuania or whoever might end up watching this. But for the most part, there are congruences between certain investments or funds or indexes that we have all across the board that you can look into. Now, I'm going to have to just kind of speak to the Americans on this one because that's what I understand. But everyone in the UK, everyone in Europe or Asia, wherever you are, go look into what your congruence is for certain things like this. Your buzzwords are going to be stuff like pensions, long-term retirement, stuff like that. So, Gabe, I'm sure you're more than familiar with stuff like 401k and IRAs, right? So a lot of people don't quite understand them. I'm going to be honest, I don't quite understand everything about them either outside of the math. But kind of what I have here is I want to look at a Roth IRA and do the screen thing again. And, people can argue about Roth IRA versus traditional IRA. That's a whole other podcast. But for this intents and purposes, I just kind of want to show how the math behaves when you're throwing these numbers in here to make people understand. And this one is really geared towards you young guys. Gabe, how old are you?
23.
All right, so this is 100% geared towards guys in your age range because this type of stuff is very time sensitive. It's not something you can drag your feet on if you want to see the most optimal returns in your older age. So right here, we have a 20-year-old who's putting about $100 a month into his Roth IRA. He's going to plan to retire at age 65, and he's got an average return of about 7% here. So you look at that, and $1,200 a month or $1,200 a year. Do the math real quick. That's $54,000 that he'll end up putting in principal from his own money into this account. But look at what he's going to end up with. About $340,000 by the time he retires. It's a little good bit of change and everything for someone, especially for just $100 a month. Josh, how much stupid stuff do you spend $100 a month on every month, right? I think the girls on OnlyFans can survive with $100 less. So we're going to start putting that into your equivalency of an IRA. But now let's go ahead and do another hypothetical right here. So let's say you wait until you're 30 years old and you start this. And let's go ahead and see what happens there. So change that. And my God, look at how that number fell. The number got cut in half because you waited just 10 years to go ahead and start it. You waited 10 years to just take that measly little $100 a month and put it away, and you just lost over $100,000 by your time of retirement. All you young guys out there, this is something I cannot beat into your heads enough. Like, if you have spare money, throw it in this kind of account. Throw it in an IRA. Throw it towards your 401k. If you can max them out, max them out. I think right now the max, anyone can correct me, but I believe the IRA max is like $6,500 per year, something like that. A lot of people could meet that if they can cut these other expenses, luxuries, and frivolities out of their life. Expensive cars, OnlyFans, fast food, stuff like that. $6,500 really is not a ton of money, but by the time you end up retiring, it will be a massive nest egg that you will have. And just for our S's and giggles here, let's do 40. So you wait till 40 years old. And there you go. Cut it in half almost again, basically. So someone around, your age, Gabe, and everything, this is one of the most critical things to start getting after is getting these IRAs stacked up. And you go in now to, oh, okay, that was not what I wanted to do. Right here. This is a 401k, and I'm sure in the UK there's some type of pension that's related to something like this. I'm not sure if they'll be through your job or how they work, but I'm sure Josh would know a good bit about that if you want to talk to him. But the 401k,
for the record, don't come to me for financial advice.
Well, surprisingly, you're probably doing better than a lot of people, honestly. When you start looking at the situation a lot of people are in, it's pretty dire. I think it's like 40% of Americans have literally $0 in savings accounts. Like, that's just mind-boggling to me. And this is why I get kind of passionate about this topic, because it's just there's no reason for you to not have savings, for you to not have a nest egg being built up if you're working a 9 to 5 and even making something like 15, $20 an hour. You can be a millionaire at retirement time off $15, $20 an hour. It is doable. A lot harder, but it's doable. But so the 401k is kind of the standard in America for job-related pension retirements. And I think there's other stuff too, like a 403b that like teachers and educators share, and certain union halls have their own pension plans, but they all kind of follow the same compoundation and everything. So right here, we got someone who's making $40,000 a year. It's quite a bit below the average salary in America. In America, the average 401k, if you contribute 6%, your job will contribute another 50% from their own to match it. So I'm going to go ahead and just say they're contributing 6% to get the full match. Pretty conservative here on how much their salary increases each year, 2.5%. And they're 30 years old, wanting to retire by age 65. So you see here, that's going to leave you with over $1 million at retirement. Pretty good number right there, but granted, I don't know exactly what $1 million is going to look like in 30 to 40 years. It might not be as much as we think it's going to be. So if you go down here and you change this to 20 years old, now look at that, nearly tripled. Over $3 million you will have by retirement.
So if I can, Fred, let's personalize this a little bit, because I've never looked into this as you're doing. Let's make that annual salary $63,000 a year, and then we'll make the age 23. I think I put in like 6%, maybe 8%. I don't know, something like that. And like you're saying, they have a workplace match of however much.
Yeah, I'm assuming you probably have that same 50 and 6% match, right?
Yeah.
All right, so now we got that put in. Well, there you go. So right now where Gabe is sitting at, if he just follows that trend right there, he'll be at about 3.6 million by retirement time. But let's make you go a little bit more aggressive. So let's go ahead and make this 10%. And now you jump up to over $5 million. And honestly, I cannot see $5 million not being enough to get you in a comfortable retirement, no matter what inflation ends up doing. So, this is one of the most powerful tools that we have when we're looking towards the future, is these accounts that people are not going to talk to you about. They're going to glance over it real quickly, and they're going to just sideline it, put it in the corner. And it's up to you to go after these kinds of things, this information, learn it for yourself. Look, I know there's a lot of financial gurus out there on YouTube and stuff, and it can all get really confusing and overwhelming. You don't have to be one of those guys with 6 freaking computer screens sitting there yelling buy, sell, whatever, to end up being a millionaire by the time of retirement. You just have to take these little steps like I'm talking about. Analyze your income and your expenses. Look at stuff that can be cut. set these little baby step goals and start cutting that money out. When that money starts getting cut out and you have extra to play with, start looking into these accounts. And right here, here's what I love about this 401k calculator is you see it's showing the total employee contributions under there. Gabe, you're not even putting in $500,000 over the course of your life, and you're getting more than 10 times that back, and your employer's just giving you an extra $137,000. So, I mean, to not be at least maxing out your employer's contribution, you're leaving so much free money on the table right there. It's not doing you any favors at that point. So, to all the young guys who end up watching this, like, put the alcohol down, put that fancy car on the sideline till you're older and everything. Stop going out to eat every day. Not only is that going to drain your bank account, it's going to drain your physical health too. And start looking at where you can start dumping this money into. Forget about the money and let it sit and let it work for you. These accounts are truly zero effort on your part other than making a couple clicks on a computer screen. And you're letting your money work in the background while you forgot it even existed. And actually, to kind of talk on that point about food and everything, if we go right back here to the spreadsheet, I just kind of want to point out with the groceries right here about how much me and my wife spend on food and all that. We shop nearly only farmers markets, organic, all that kind of stuff. We rarely ever go to a big chain supermarket to buy food. And personally, I don't think those numbers are too crazy or anything. You know, you can eat a healthy organic diet and it's going to make your body feel better. It's going to be better for your health in the long run. And it's not as ridiculously expensive as people like to make it out to be. So, you know, look into your local farmers markets, look into just local farms in general. What of them are selling produce directly that you can go buy from? Because especially in America, and I'm sure anybody from Europe, when they come to America, they look at our food and they look at it with these gigantic eyeballs of like, what is this? This isn't real chicken. This isn't real vegetables. This isn't anything of that sort. And they're right. It's not. In America, a lot of our food is freaking more synthetic plastic crap than it's actually real food. And this is a way to get away from having to give these gigantic supermarkets your money for them to steal your health. So anyone out there who's watching, look into local farms around you, local markets, anything not big chain, and just go see what the prices are like. Sometimes we end up finding food at these local markets that's actually cheaper than what we can buy at a supermarket. So you never know what you're going to end up finding. That's kind of my advice that blends finances and health a little bit. So definitely something to look into, Josh, because if you're eating fast food every day, I can't imagine your cholesterol or blood pressure is doing too well either. So maybe we start looking into a more whole food based diet. But, you know,
I can definitely look into that.
But yeah, I mean, like actually one thing, a personal example here. I remember I was in Spain last year with my wife and everything, and we looked at a bag of Doritos, and the Doritos over there, I'd seen it on the internet before, and I was like, I'd got to see if this is real or not. The ingredient label is about half the size. Pretty wild, because you know, over in Europe, their regulatory agencies actually do their job. Sorry, not trying to get into politics or nothing, but yeah. So I really hope that kind of helped you out, Josh. I know you're in a really tough situation, and it's just it really is not your fault. That's kind of one of the biggest things I want to get out here. You know, you are bombarded every single waking moment of your life with these media corporations and everything. Their only goal is to get you to spend your money on whatever crap they're putting out there. This is the biggest thing. This is where we go back to the discipline. This is where we go back to the self-accountability. You need to kind of take a step back, look at what these things are, look at what you're going to be spending money on, and then look to the future, look to the next 2, 3, 5, 10 years. Ask yourself, one, is this a necessity? Do I need it to continue my life in a comfortable and efficient way? And two, how is this going to benefit me in the long run? Is this something that is worth that price tag that I'm seeing on there? My dad used to give me a good bit of advice. I know it's kind of really general and surface level, but I like it. If you can't afford two of it, you can't afford one of it. So that kind of accounts for all that other stuff that we don't see, all those other expenses, costs associated with larger purchases like a house, a vehicle, land, whatever the case may be. But obviously, there's a lot more that can be said about finances. There's a lot more that can be said about investing. And I'm not trying to be somebody who overwhelms anyone with information, especially since I am, like I said, not an educated professional myself. I'm just going off what I've learned over the years and everything. So, Josh, if you or anybody else would like a little bit of advice from what I got, I would love to answer any DMs on Facebook or anything. I'll do my best to get back to whoever wants to talk to me about this type of stuff. It's like I said, it's a passionate topic for me. I really think a lot of people are in horrible situations that don't deserve to be in horrible situations. And by tweaking a couple of lifestyle choices, they could be in a much better place.
I'll just throw out
It's interesting.
Sorry, Josh. If Fred has convinced you that you need a budget, then it seems like some sort of a daunting task. It really isn't. As long as you can account for your fixed expenses and your variable expenses, Fred had a different word for them, whatever it was, you can legitimately just throw this stuff into an AI machine and say, make me a budget, and it'll break it all down for you. Or you can go online and you can find a spreadsheet that you just stick it in there and you have a budget. But it's the discipline that Fred is saying here that is the most pertinent part of following that budget. So just free advice for you guys. If you need to build a budget, AI can build one for you. Find it online.
I'm really happy you brought that up. I completely forgot about that too. AI is a developing tool. It's changing every single month. And a lot of them, there are free options out there for lots of different AI tools. Go out there, see what's available. If Excel really is too daunting or whatever the case may be, that's not your only option. You have so many more avenues to it. And Josh, I think you were trying to say something earlier.
Yeah, so it's interesting because when you think about it, it really doesn't take a whole lot to really change your situation. If you can control what you're spending, keep a limit on things, you apply that discipline, the results will just start to compound over time. It might take a while to get that $3 million nest egg, but even in the short term, you are going to see a noticeable change. And you're not just going to be wealthier, you're going to be happier. You're going to be in a better mood because your diet's better. You're going to be less stressed because you're not worrying about, when the next bill's got to be paid.
Yeah, exactly. And this is kind of why I did want to come on the show and talk about this specific topic because, in the group, there's a lot of abstract advice towards improvement and stuff. There's a lot of, be better, think better, work out, stuff like that. It's not really a compartmentalized step-by-step process from a lot of people's posts from what I see. I feel like finances is a cut and dry, like these are the numbers, this is how they affect the total outcome, this is how to change them. I love that stuff. I love math. I love numbers. I love tangible factors. And so this is one of those things where you don't have to do a whole lot of internal introspection to actually see positive changes in your life. You just have to start tracking these numbers, looking at them and seeing where can I start cutting my expenses at.
Yeah. And I would add to that if you track these numbers like Fred is saying, it's the exact same process for losing weight and getting like a six-pack or something. You literally just count the micros and the macros. You use steady state cardio to lower those levels of calories throughout the day. You put yourself in that deficit, you're losing 1.5 pounds to 2 pounds of fat per week. And it's the same thing in everything in life. You just apply that discipline, you track what's going on, and the dividends it pays is just remarkable.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like Josh is saying, you're not going to see the results immediately, but it's a trust the process kind of thing. And if you are tracking the numbers, you will see the effect on the numbers, even if you're not seeing the effect on yourself immediately. But that's really just my biggest takeaway from this whole thing is look at the numbers and start seeing what you can cut and where you can cut from. You don't have to listen to these like Dave Ramsey super financial gurus or Susie Orman or whoever, and you don't have to be a New York stockbroker to get to the life you want to get to. It's a lot simpler than people make it out to be, but unfortunately, a lot of Americans fall victim to the traps that are laid out in front of us. And I'm sure same thing in Europe too and all over the world. These traps and pitfalls are set forth. They're not there to help us. These big banks, these big lenders, they're not there to be our friend. They're there to get our money. And every time you're going into these purchase situations, you are going to war. And that is how you need to look at it. One more thing I kind of did want to add, actually, that I did forget about earlier when we were talking about vehicles. This is a bit of a personal advice more so. It's not really a definite rule. But what I would tell people, everybody, when they buy a car, they want to go in, they want to negotiate money off the car, right? Nobody really thinks about trying to negotiate dealer or manufacturer warranties. That's one big thing that a lot of people need to look into. And I use a personal example on this. When I first met my wife, she was brand new in college and she had a little Chevy Aveo. I don't know if you guys have ever heard of those things, but she got it. And her dad went in with her, and that's what he did. He negotiated an extended warranty on this thing up to 100,000 miles. She bought it at 4,000 miles, almost brand new pretty much. And in the time that her and I were dating while she drove this car, she got an entire brand new fuel system. That means the gas tank all the way up to the injector is brand new, put in for free. She ended up getting a brand new engine put in for free. And there was some other thing that was like $1,000 some that she ended up getting for free too. But all the invoices total came out to over $13,000 of work for free on this vehicle. That's more than what she paid for the vehicle. So that's kind of a thing, don't go in there and try to fight these people over $1,000 or $2,000 off the sticker price. Go in there, pay the full price, but look for those extended warranties from the dealer or from the manufacturer. In addition to, with her car troubles and everything, she was given free rentals, probably about 3 months worth of free rentals and everything. We all know how much that would cost. So that's just something to think about. I'm not saying like that is what you have to do or anything, but it's just kind of just give that a thought before you go in there and, get $800 off the price of the sticker and then walk out of there thinking you won or something like that. And then your transmission ends up blowing up and did you actually win?
Good advice. There's all kinds of things you can do when you really look at it and break it down. But something I actually want to touch on is, you mentioned about this 401k that you can invest in. Well, something that I've been doing for like the past 2, maybe 3 years now is, like I mentioned, I had that investment fund. That's actually a real thing. So I've been investing into a life strategy fund for however long it's been, and every payday put in £100. Now it's not an extortionate amount of money, but it's enough money that if you, let's say, the stock value goes down, you've only lost £100, haven't you? Yeah. It's a manageable expense. And what put me off before I started doing it was the fact that I'm putting money in, I'm risking it, I'm not going to see a return. But I've done that every single month without fail for nearly 3 years now. And all those times that I've bought in, it's been really low. They've compounded. So when it goes up, it goes up. So I think I've invested somewhere between about £3,500 to £4,000, and I checked it the other day, and it was something like a 36% return rate, and that's only in like three years. So I've not even I've totally forgot about this money, and now I've seen that massive increase. It really doesn't take much.
And that's what I'm talking about. You put that money aside and you let it work for you. Because here's the thing. If you're keeping your money in a checking account or cash under your mattress or whatever you're doing, you are losing money every single day. Inflation is not going negative. Inflation is only going positive. So your money becomes more and more worthless every single day. That's why these slow grow type of accounts are important, because if not, you're flushing money down the toilet, basically. And actually, one thing I kind of want to do to piggyback off of that one, I ask both of you, have you guys ever heard of an app called Acorns?
Yeah, doesn't it round off whatever purchase you have to the nearest dollar or whatever, and then put that change into your account?
And so the reason I wanted to ask you both is because I don't know if it's available in the UK or in Europe, but look into it, obviously, for anyone watching. It's that by no means is that app like it's going to set you up for the rest of your life or anything. But one thing I like about that app specifically is, like Gabe said, it just gets you thinking about that little tiny. You buy a coffee for like $2.75. It gets you thinking about that 25 cents. That 25 cents that you're not going to think about, you're going to forget. It's going to take it, dump it into an account, and it's one of these index fund type accounts where it's a whole bunch of different companies or funds, and you have options of aggressive, moderate, whatever you want to do with your money. If you're young, like if you're around Gabe's age or something like that, you can be aggressive. Go ahead and be aggressive, because even if the worst happens, you will have time to recover. So I like to tell people at that age, be aggressive within reason. But one of my mechanics, actually, he's like 19, 20 years old or something. And he started that Acorn thing like a year ago. And he was talking to one of our manufacturing directors, and he was like, "Oh yeah, man, I got like $3,000 in this thing now. I never would have thought about that." And it's true. You go and just swipe that card. You don't think about the extra money left over. So for people who are looking to get their foot wet, that's kind of something that maybe you can look into. Get this app and just see what it does for you. And you can start seeing how those little tiny steps lead to big leaps over time. And another thing, too, about long-term investing is for all my Americans over here and military veterans, the TSP. TSP is like the 401k on steroids. Like that thing it's only available to active DOD members, I believe. So, in America, that's number is in the millions. So I would be shocked if one of them doesn't end up watching this at some point. It's one of the best kept secrets in the U.S. military. A lot of people never talk about it. I'm curious if the UK has something similar. I'd be shocked to hear they don't. But that's definitely another avenue to go look down. If you are in the U.S. military or you work for the Department of Defense, dump as much money as you can into the TSP. Forget about IRA at that point. Forget about 401k. The TSP will outpace both of those by a mile. And just go talk to your chain of command and superiors about it. They can help you out with everything you need to get started. But, like I said, I didn't want to get too far into the weeds, so I'm not going to talk about specific like index funds or whatever. But yeah, I really did like the format of that, Josh. You kind of, give me something to go off of. I'm sure that scenario you painted, I'm sure somebody relates to that scenario out there, whether it's OnlyFans or whatever else is their crutch that they just can't seem to get away from. That's usually when you go look at people who are in financial ruin, you find something of that sort. You find a crutch, you find an addiction, you find something of that. And that's kind of why we got to lean into the discipline, the self-accountability, the introspection to look at yourself and say, is this necessary? Is this benefiting me? Or is this hurting me? And in your case, sure sounded like it was hurting you quite a bit.
Absolutely. So it's been a really good, really great episode today, Fred. And there's so much more I want to talk about, but I think we're going to have to wrap things up pretty soon. But I would love to have you on another time, because one thing in particular I want to talk about. Many people watching this video, Fred, are people who obviously they want to become more financially free. And a lot of people, they want to start their own businesses. Now, obviously, Fred, you have your own business, you have a lot of knowledge in that area. Maybe if the audience is interested, we could look at doing another episode and just going over a few things that might be helpful. Does that sound good?
Absolutely. I'd love to get on and talk about that. And, before the show, too, you and I were kind of talking about some of the downsides of that life. And that's definitely something I want to touch on, too. It's not all sunshine and rainbows.
Absolutely. So, guys, if you are interested in me, Fred, and Gabe doing another episode talking about business, let us know down in the comments. Be sure to leave us a like as well, because abuse that algorithm for us. We need to grow. We need to grow this podcast.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, for real. I love what you guys are doing. I love what, you're trying to put out some positivity and just help men be better in general. And not a lot of places do that. Not a lot of places want to encourage that. So you guys, no matter what obstacles pop up, just please keep on going. You're helping guys, even if it's just one guy's life you change. I think that's something to be proud of and wear on your chest.
Well, thank you, Fred. And as always, it's been good to have you help us along this journey. And yeah.
Absolutely. I wish I could do more, contribute more time, because like I said, this is a pretty passionate topic of mine, just what you and Simon and everybody else are doing. But, just life gets in the way.
Absolutely. Well, with that being said, I think this is now... Is it episode 9 or episode 10, Gabe?
Probably 9.
I lost count.
That's a good number.
We'll go with 9. 9.5. Okay, so episode 9.5. And by the way, I'm sorry, guys, but I've made the split decision to change the name of the podcast from the Chadcast to the Men's Self-Improvement Podcast. Sorry, not sorry. And yeah, thanks for watching, guys, and see you next time. Bye-bye.